This video is proudly sponsored by Rivco, your riveting specialist. In 1907, when the Titanic and her near-identical twin sister ship Olympic were being constructed, some of the 15,000 workers at Harland and Wolff shipyards in Belfast, Ireland, were designated and trained professional riveters. They would heat up the massive rivets in the red-hot fires until they were white-hot, and then they would pick them out with metal tongs and throw them up to workers on a platform above where the rivet was needed, and another guy called a catcher would catch the white-hot rivet in a metal bucket. From there, the rivet would be handled as quickly as possible and inserted into a ready-made rivet hole through overlapping hull plates, which were inch-thick steel. Two guys on the outside of the hull would force the rivet into place, while another two guys on the inside of the hull would bash the tail end of the rivet flat before the rivet cooled down and became unusable and had to be taken out or replaced. Foremen would often walk around the shipyards and the ship hull and tap on the rivets and make sure that they made a 100% tight seal. If a rivet was loose or cracked or done badly, said rivet would be marked and replaced almost immediately. On average, workers would only be able to install around 400 rivets a day. The real Titanic used more than 3 million rivets in her construction. That's an unreasonable expectation for a miniature which is only supposed to look the part. My name is Gino Hart and I am the designer of the Tintanic, the largest Titanic model in Africa, made of tin. If you're new to our channel, I would highly suggest that you bash that subscribe button in, like a rivet. Alright, now let's get into it. Rivco manufactures the same type of rivet that was used on the real Titanic. They are called solid rivets. Two people are needed when inserting and forming them. One person on the inside and one on the outside. As on the Titanic, the rivet end is heated up before forming with impact. We are using blind rivets on the Tintanic, which do a similar job, only the mechanism is different. Due to the small spaces on the model, it would not have been practical to use solid rivets. The first time I thought about making use of pop rivets, I had only had a coffee tin and 2 random pop rivets lying around. I didn't even know what a pop rivet gun was or what a pop rivet did, and I don't even think I owned a drill. I had some rivet gun lying around from I don't know where, and I knew that a project like Tintanic would be feasible if I had an enormous amount of them. Rivets would be the key ingredient to really sell the massive scope of the project. Previously, I had always built Titanic models out of cardboard, and these were prototypes held together with tape and screws here and there, but they were always meant to be destroyed, so I didn't care about any accuracy or intense kind of detailing or what anybody thought. The prototype model Titanic ships were really play toys meant to be sunk. Now mind you, one pop rivet at let's say 25 cents each is very cheap, but the scope of my vision required around roughly 100,000 pop rivets. As tiny as these rivets are, as insignificant as they may seem, these little guys can add up really fast and become one of the most expensive elements of the entire build. When the Titanic began construction back in 2014, one of the most essential parts of the construction process were the rivets. There was no other way to put the Titanic together. I mean, sure, I still needed wood for her 9 interior decks, aluminium sheets for her 8.7 meter hull, and a lot of other stuff like glues, plastics, and tools. But the rivets were the most important thing. So originally the Titanic was sponsored by the company Connect Co, and they initially agreed to provide the project with 100,000 rivets. But by the time we started touring in 2017, construction and detailing had come to a halt, and I had only used around 55,000 rivets up to that point in time. By the time our South African countrywide tour was over in 2022, after visiting 21 different cities in 6 major provinces and showing to an audience of more than 10 million visitors, and construction picked up again, I was in need of a new rivet sponsorship for the remaining 50,000 rivets. And I remember thinking, where in the world would I find another 50,000 rivets? I was extremely fortunate to partner with the company Rivco, who graciously offered to help us out with the other 50,000 rivets to complete the Tintanic project. When Tintanic opened a working Studio 401 on the upper level of Lone Hill Shopping Centre in Sandton, the mountain of work ahead of me suddenly crept up and out of nowhere. Things like the grand staircases, wall paneling, stairs, furniture, miniature figurines, the filling of wood fuller in decks and sanding them down. These were all the least of my problems, and took a step back on the to-do list. I urgently needed to rethink some of the design features. The main priority was the white painted upper superstructures, which required a lot of detailing work. I firstly needed the rivets, followed by new aluminium plating, and also I needed to install perspex glass on all the B and A deck windows on the upper decks. The original white superstructures topside are all made of 4mm waterproof plywood. And of course, everybody knows the Titanic's upper decks weren't really built out of wood. It had to be cladded and overlaid with aluminium to look the part of a steel ship. And both of these features, perspex glass and aluminium plating, both of them use rivets to fasten them to the original superstructure. A rivet basically works like this. It's kind of a nail, and the tail end of the rivet is placed inside what is called a rivet gun. And the nose end of the rivet, the stumpy part, is placed inside a sizable corresponding hole through metal plates. When squeezed, the rivet gun pulls on the tail end of the rivet and forces the stumpy bit on the other side of the hole to compress. After about 3 or 4 squeezes, the tail end of the rivet will break off, leaving behind the stumpy part in the metal structure, which will either have a flat circle appearance, which we call flush rivets. These are very helpful in places where you want almost perfectly flat surfaces, like underneath the ship or at connection points, and blind rivets, which leaves behind a knobby circular rivet head. The latter is the most commonly found rivet on the Titanic. The rivets on the Titanic are purposely oversized to create a sort of animation or cartoon effect. They make up the space on a plate or adjacent a window where, say, 100 rivets were used on the real ship. Titanic would represent 20 or 40 at the same space. It's what we call artistic license. Now, the bridge of Titanic bothered me tremendously. On the real ship, the bridge was actually made out of wood. They didn't want any steel structure interfering with the compass or navigational equipment of the ship. And notably, there was nothing wrong with the bridge of the Titanic to begin with. I just wanted to have it clad in aluminium plates because of the A and B deck superstructures. I wanted the bridge to have a more smoother appearance. It stressed me out because I was thinking to myself, geez, I'm messing with the face of the ship here. But it turned out to be the best thing. Once painted white, no one will ever know that it's made of tin, and we can all go back to relaxing about the accuracy element. It was really only clad in aluminium to match the other deck superstructures and to carry the same sort of riveting on the bridge wing cabs. In terms of timing, in your mind you always think, oh, it's so easy, we'll have it done in a week. But Tin has a mind and a time schedule of her own. She dictates to me as her builder what needs to be done and in which order and when it will occur. It might take only 8 working days to rivet one deck, install the perspex glass and attach the aluminium plates, but in reality it takes 2 to 3 weeks just to work on one side of the ship on that one particular deck. Costly delays like show times, editing, filming days, even rest days. Then there are days when I work like a sailor and I have the wording to match it. And the next morning I have to come in and rip it all off and redo everything in order to artistically recreate an element that is more historically accurate and closer to what the real ship looked like. The original Titanic had overlapping plates on her waterline. But on Tintanic, because of the sectional divides, if you didn't know, she was built in 6 different sections, I was forced to take artistic license and add additional checkerboard style plates under the waterline. Not to worry, this will all look fine once painted in red waterline color. It's these little elements that make the Titanic very unique. She's a ship of her own. Once all 105,000 real rivets have been installed in the hull of the Titanic by the end of this year, nudge nudge, wink wink, fingers crossed, it will be an all-time new world record set for the most real pop rivets used in a single Titanic model project. Well, we've had an absolutely riveting time. Thank you so much for tuning in today on the special edition podcast. Tintanic, the Ship of My Dreams, airs a new episode every month on the Tintanic YouTube channel. Please like, comment, share and subscribe if you would like to follow us on our incredible journey. You can also join our Tintanic the Construction Facebook page for free daily updates. Link in the description box below. If you live in South Africa, you can still catch the actual Tintanic on the upper level of Lone Hill Shopping Centre in Sandton ahead of her world tour. Tickets are available on Quicket Online Tickets for every last Saturday of the month. See you there! This video is proudly sponsored by Rivco, your riveting specialist.